Hey everyone, my name is Penny Zanker, and it's time to reset. This podcast goes beyond just navigating change. It's about new ways of thinking about how you can approach challenges, how you can shift your mindset when needed, create some space and grace for yourself so that you can rethink, recharge, and reprioritize when and where needed. Are you ready to unlock your full potential? Thank you for hitting play and sharing this next episode with me. It's time to reset. Hello. So happy to have you here. You are potentially a new listener or a returning listener, whichever. We are so grateful to have you here. And today we're going to have a fantastic discussion. We are talking to Rick Walker. And he is the author of the forthcoming book that we're going to talk about, 9 Steps to Build a Life of Meaning. Don't we all want that? And the subtitle is How to Unlock Your Mind, Your Happiness, Power, and Your Enemy's Demise. We're going to find out what that means. He's a renowned leader across multiple domains. He's a founder and CEO, and he's built a 400 employee company. And he scaled a 2,000 plus team member nonprofit into 53 countries as chairman. And he's recruited $5 billion worth of capital investments in his hometown to generate 5,000 new jobs simultaneously. Woo! That's amazing on all accounts. His podcast, and he talks about communication and communicating deep insights into how mankind functions. It's rooted in his acquired knowledge of ancient literature, world religions, strategy, and the arts. So he's very interesting. And his central claim is that each of these domains communicates the truth. Well, without further ado, I want to talk to Rick. Welcome to the show.
Lovely to be with you, Penny. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited to have this discussion. And now after reading the bio, I'm even more intrigued. Let's just start with the idea that each domain communicates the truth. What does that mean? That sounds very deep.
Yeah, I think it was Vincent van Gogh that probably said it best in one of his great letters to his brother Theo. Of course, Vincent van Gogh, the great artist, didn't have any success while he lived. It was only after his death, and his main supporter was his brother Theo. In one of these letters, he writes Theo, and he says that there's something about beauty, and that beauty reveals the truth. And so he begins to talk about this idea that the beauty that you find in nature, in people, in art, has a hint of it, in the truth in it. And we forget oftentimes that Van Gogh, before he was a career painter, even the starving artist that he was more of a theologian and a philosopher. And you find the same sort of things in Da Vinci, where he was a scientist, an engineer, and also an artist. And we begin to see this interlocking, this overlapping of domains, which I call the arbitrage of masterful ideas, that often when you find one great idea, you will find it in multiple domains, and you begin to find these overlaps.
I like that. Yeah, I can totally see that to be so. I use the expression strategies are cross-contextual. And maybe there's a little bit to that, right? Where they cross across multiple domains. It's like maybe at the level you're talking about, it's like, meta models and things like that, right? About ways of thinking that cross the domains. Is that kind of what you mean?
Yeah, very similarly. I think that reality in the end is fractal in nature. And if people don't know what that word means, the word fractal is that if you look at a beach, for instance, and you zoom out, whether you look at the granular level or you zoom up to, a mile high, the base basically looks the same. And trees take the same form. You look at the branching of trees, oftentimes they'll be fractal in nature. They look the same at a distance as well as up close. And if there are these loops, there are these fractals, there are these mirrorings that you see in reality that stretch beyond the various domains and into each other. And so these are sort of the higher forms of truth. Einstein, for instance, when he was looking for the general theory of relativity, and he's moving away from the special theory, he begins to get this idea that simplicity is beautiful and there's this symmetry there. You see this also in the interlocking work with science and math, where math in a way profits what science should do. And then it verifies that the prophecy was actually true afterwards, right? You check your work in a sense. And so you begin to see these interplays between the different domains, very much akin to the way that you just explained it, Penny. Yeah.
What does this have to do with your book? Since you said it was sort of the central core of your message. So how does that bring us to your book?
So we have to realize that when we look around, we see truth, we see beauty, and we even see power speaking to us through various forms of art, dance, music, and also the business senses. And I even have a chapter in my book speaking about the nature that statistics plays in the world of beauty and how all that is interwoven. And so I think that it's really important that when we look at how we see the rest of the world, not just the business world, we look for glimmers of truth and we're prepared to learn outside of our domain of competency because it can share with us a greater degree of what works. So let me give you an example. So when we were selling that nonprofit into 53 countries, we're dealing with individuals that are from different backgrounds. You think about the great trading families of India, for instance, having a basic understanding of how they work culturally and also how their religion interacts with their cultures, that helps me better understand also how to deal with people in other cultures. For instance, if I understand that Shiva the Destroyer functions within a Hindu culture, I can better ascertain how that Hindu may interoperate with me on a negotiation. That's basically what I do for a living. In a real estate private equity business, I'm a professional negotiator.
Nice.
Most times, I'm always negotiating something. But being able to understand,
aren't we all?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So being able to understand those different things certainly is additive to your traditional business hat.
Right. Well, I'm still coming to, because your book is about creating a life of meaning, right? So when you were saying all that and getting the different perspectives and looking across domains, I feel like being open adds more meaning to our lives, right? Exploring new things, discovery, right, adds more meaning. Is that part of where you're going with those truths? Or, I'm trying to break it down for people because it's trying to make some connections.
So whenever we talk about meaning, what we're really talking about is we're talking about relevance and we're talking about indestructibility. And if we think, I mentioned beauty, I mentioned truth, I mentioned power as well, that we're looking for those sorts of essences. We're looking for hints of those things outside of our typical domains in the art and the dance and the music, and so forth, and even in the physics and the philosophy and of course the religions. So we're looking.
So wait, the second one. Let me interrupt you for a second. You said the second one was indestructibility.
Yes.
So
yes.
I totally lost me there. So probably everyone else went, huh?
Yes.
Or, Scooby, huh?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's right. That's right. That's right. So indestructibility has to do with permanence. And permanence is the only thing that you can base meaning or purpose on or relevance on, because everything else is sort of passing away. And I think that the more that you look across all these different domains, you'll find one guiding principle. The way that I articulate the principle is like this. The wisest mind looks to the most distant future for the most valued reward that it can purchase with the currency of the present.
Okay.
Let me repeat that because I know I had a lot of moving parts there. The wisest mind looks to the most distant future for the most valued reward that it can purchase with the currency of the present. And that's how we find true relevance. Not that we feel important, we feel like we're doing something meaningful or purposeful. We feel like we have meaning. The feelings they're great to have, but they don't really mean anything. They're just feelings. And so when we're able to attach our work, our love, our purpose, the way that we take care of the people around us, something that's further out, the closer we become to living people with a permanence and meaning, because we're basically basing it on something that's indestructible.
Wow, that's deep. This is very, very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. So is that one of the principles? So there's the 9 steps. So is one of those one of the steps?
Yeah. So the whole book is about this arbitrage of masterful ideas, trying to see how these domains interplay. And based out of those, I discovered these 9 steps. The 9 steps always, I believe it's step 8 tells us that you should act like you're going to live forever, but move like all you have is today. So act like you're going to live forever, but move like you're going to have today. This is the idea.
So how would I show up when I do that?
Yeah, great question. So if we're in an interchange with someone that we don't agree with, we have to realize that you have one or two ways of looking at that person. Number one, you're looking at that person like they're a body, that they just happen to have like a spirit about them. Or the other way, the reverse, that they're a soul that just happens to have a body. And so if I look at you like your soul that just happens to have a body, I look at you like you're a person that could possibly live forever. Like you have an infinite worth about you. And I'm going to treat you with that regard, with that dignity, with that respect. And I'm going to listen for that sort of response, that you're the type of person that could hold within you the infinite wisdom of the universe. Or I could just treat you like you're a person that's going to be dead in 30 years, right? It's one of the two things. And whenever we deal with people, we've got to think about that in that sort of way. And so that's why, we act like we're going to live forever. Like I'm going to act like you're going to live forever as well. I might be wrong, but I'd rather give you that
right. What I hear you saying is then I get an elevated level of respect if I boil it down very simplified from what you just said. That
correct.
You're going to show up towards me in a much more respectful light than if you feel like I'm gone tomorrow.
Absolutely. And you're going to have a better life living that way. And I'm going to have a better life living that way. And everyone that we connect to are going to have better lives. Yeah. So we're going to have more joy, more beauty in our lives.
Absolutely. And who doesn't want more joy and beauty? I mean, seriously. I mean, we all want that. Well, that's pretty cool. I don't want to jump around. Is there anything else you want to share? I have a number of different questions I want to ask you. And I know we have a finite amount of time. Is there anything else you want to share around those 9 steps specifically?
Yeah. So specifically, this whole book, 9 Steps to Build a Life of Meaning, is aimed at the men that are within what a lot of professionals call a meaning crisis. These are men that are underperforming. They're sort of wandering, sort of meandering. Even a lot of young men that are in their 20s that maybe haven't even found love. They're not even interested in dating. And so this is targeted at that specific crowd by someone that comes from outside the academic world. That's not a pontificator, but I'm a doer. And so I've got some theories that are built around doing, not pontificating on what you could possibly do. And so I'm speaking not only to those men, but also the women that have those sorts of men in their life, their sons, their brothers, those sorts of people in their life. And the offer is this, that, let me have those conversations you've been trying to have. Because often, like when we're in a conversation with someone that we love, whether it's a son, spouse, anything like that, we're trying to talk to that person and trying to get them to fit the mold of what we wish they would become. And that's not in itself a very loving act. It's me trying to effectuate my will on that person, right?
Yeah, and it doesn't work. It won't create joy and beauty in anyone's life.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so that's sort of my offer is let me have those conversations that you've been trying to have for years and just hasn't worked out. It's the more loving of the two options.
The steps. Which one of those is your favorite that you feel is the most significant?
So there's a step in there about giving that if you want to keep something, you have to give it away. It's a reference to C.S. Lewis's line where he says that nothing that you have not given away will ever really be yours. Nothing that you've not given away will ever really be yours.
Right. Well, wait, that's a brain mess up.
Yes.
Nothing that you've never given away.
Nothing that you've not given away will ever really be yours. So for instance,
not given away will ever. Yeah. Okay. So nothing is yours.
Yeah. So like, if I want to be in a loving relationship with someone, I've got to give that love in order for me to actually experience love.
Mm-hmm.
If I ever want to have any sort of competency, I've got to be willing to practice to give away that competency with the hopes of actually receiving competency in the end. If I ever want to really live a life, I got to be willing to give up my life for someone that I love more than myself. We talked about fractals earlier, like how you see the same sorts of themes out. You even see this in agriculture. If you ever hope to have a tree to shade you or a tree to bear fruit, you have to be willing to put the seed in the ground, let the ground, kill the seed and encompass the seed to sprout forward. You got to give the seed away. It's all these sorts of things. Even in investing, you got to get in it in order to keep up with inflation. An investor has to give his money to an entrepreneur who's able to invest it. Hopefully they'll be able to keep up with inflation. Because if you don't do that, you can lose all your money to inflation. You got to be willing to invest it. And so you see these sorts of principles throughout these different domains like we spoke about earlier. And so nothing that you've not given away will ever really be yours. The only way to keep something is first to give it away. And it's one of the great paradoxes of how really reality works and how a life of meaning works. You have to be prepared to give. Even the law of reciprocity tells us that that's true.
I was leaning towards a different way away from reciprocity and more towards my belief that one of the things that holds us back from being more resilient is our inability to let go. And so for that, I think that's a practice of letting go. To give is letting go through not expecting anything in return, just to give. And maybe there is a desire, but not to hold on to that, because when you hold on to that expectation, then, you could be taking away some of that joy because it may come somewhere else. But your expectation, is that it's going to come from that same spot. Does that make sense?
Well, absolutely. And I think the key thing with giving is that it's always better to give to someone that has no opportunity to repay you. Like
Because you don't expect it.
Absolutely, just
because
like you
don't,
said.
right. But
Yes.
there is a place where we give and we just believe, which I believe, that it'll come back in some other shape or form. I'm here to serve and someone will serve me in such a way. You know what I mean? Like that's my belief system and that helps me. I might give to someone who could give to me, but maybe they won't. And that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I think the why is probably more important than the gift as well. Like why we're doing it, right? So
Yes.
if we were to give because of the law of reciprocity, knowing that we'll get something back in return, or they'll feel obligated to do that. That's not really a gift. That's sort of a selfish act, like that selfish act of us trying to make our love conform to how we want them to act. But yeah,
Exactly.
if we can give for the right person, like the right why is always the right way.
I like that. I've never heard that. The right why is always the right way. That's
You can
beautiful.
steal it. You can steal it.
If I can remember it. Here, I'll write it down. No, it's a great saying. So we only have a couple more minutes left. I want to ask you, because this is called Time to Reset, and it is about understanding also how we can take these, just hearing about some of these steps, right, can give us cause to take a reset moment, to step back, to get some perspective on our life and on those different domains and help us to realign around what really matters to us and what we want to create in our lives. In your life, what's a significant personal reset moment that you've had, and what did it teach you about resilience and meaning?
So about 2 years ago, I realized that the only things that mattered really were the books that I read, the silence that I participated in, and my dinner table. That if I could get all three of those things aligned and get them sort of set up right, everything else would sort of click, or they would just fade away. And it was sort of revelation that it was sort of those ordinary moments that mattered the most around the dinner table with my family, the books that I read, and the silence that me being able to listen and to ponder to what God wanted to say to me, but also it's like what's going on in my own brain and on my own heart too. And so that was really a revelation for me, trying to, I was looking for this spectacular new idea. I wanted to invent some great religion, and it all just came down to those three things.
Right. It's funny you say that. Recently, I've been stressing over, God, nothing that's really important. And during some breath work that I was doing, that I kept coming back to hearing that none of this matters. None of this matters. All this, whatever pressure I'm putting on myself or the stress, none of it matters in the real things that create meaning in my life anyway. So that is like a mantra that I keep coming back to every time I feel stress, is just to remind myself, none of this matters. This isn't stuff for me to be stressed about. So it kind of clicked there for me in what you said.
Yeah, I actually sent my newsletter out today, and it was about the Tao Te Ching, chapter 34, talking about that the pathway to greatness is just to realize that nothing matters. And you find this in the Jewish text, right? It says, vanity, vanity, all is vanity. It's all passing away. What are you worrying about?
Yeah, totally. Well, I'll have to check out your newsletter this week then. That's apropos. I have a couple more questions. You've quoted a number of different authors, and I know that that's in your bio, and you just said how meaningful it is to read really great books. Do you have a photographic memory that you can remember all these, like chapter 37? And, I'm just curious because I wish I had a better memory to remember different passages and things like that from great books.
Yeah, so I wish I did. I have a very horrible memory. In fact, a
Really?
big part of my book is me dealing with a mental fog where I'm unable to recall, and it was for years and years and years. And so it's been a challenge. The way that I'm able to recite these things and to recall these things is because I've got to go back and refresh my memory. And in fact,
Mhm.
I've got a stack of books that I reread and re-review on a regular basis.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So what are the top three books then?
Oh my.
Well, you
Okay.
have a stack. They must be so
Yeah.
ones that. What are the ones that you come back to and you read every year, or you read multiple times?
Yeah. I mean, so I think there's some classics you can always reread. I think Dante's Inferno is a classic you always want to reread. This morning I reread parts of C.S. Lewis's Till We Have Faces. I think, the Tao Te Ching is always a classic you want to keep reviewing. And then, Robert Greene, I don't know if you guys follow any Robert Greene work, his great series on power, Machiavellian Power. Machiavelli is always a great resource to reread because there's those times in life where you just got to be just cold-blooded strategic. And so having some sort of corpus of that kind of behind all the niceties and all the charisma is certainly very helpful.
Spoken from the true negotiator, right?
Yes, yes, yes. Well, but of course, I'm dealing with people that have been negotiators in their families for 1,000 years.
Yeah.
If you go and you research like the great Indian families, like the Agarwals and the James, they've been doing that for 1,000 years. So we're sitting here reading our little strategy books and stuff like that. Like we don't have a chance. We don't have a
Right.
chance.
Well, as long as you're the student, right, then you've got a chance
That's right.
because things are changing all the time. So
That's
that's the
right.
good news. So, lastly, what are some, again, understanding that we're talking about, having a more meaningful life? What are some reset practices, some quick tips that you use that help you to stay present to what's meaningful to you?
Yeah. So I review my calendar on a very regular basis and I also review my spending. If I'm spending more on myself and the debts that I personally incur that I'm spending on helping other people and, putting my kids into teach my kids lessons, that sort of thing, I'm probably misdirected somewhere. And that gets back to the dinner table, the silence, and the books. I can remedy a lot with those three massive levers. Reset practices. I like to go back and read the Jewish scriptures quite a bit. In fact, when I do my annual planning, and I'm not a Jew, when I do my annual planning, I will very regularly read the entirety of Proverbs, which is, I think it's 31 chapters, and I'll read 50 chapters of the Psalms before I'm like mentally prepared to do any sort of annual planning exercise or any strategic work. And that generally will take, that takes almost a full day to do that. So then I'm now on day two where I'm ready to start planning. The resetting is right. Often some light breath work would be great. Hitting the Peloton's always really good as well, just to sort
Mm,
of get that energy out as well. And then just monitoring your caffeine for me anyway, that's been very, very helpful. Lots of daylight.
wonderful. Thank you. I just, people like to hear different people's strategies so that they can better choose what's going to be effective for them, what might be new. Because I always say that things work until they don't. Like, have you ever had something that worked for you for a long time and used to do that and it kept you on target? And then all of a sudden it just wasn't having the same oomph to it and you needed to switch it up. Has that ever happened to you?
Well, so I guess was one sort of trigger thing I didn't mention. What you just said reminded me of this. So whenever I'm going into like a really big meeting, or I'm going into like I'm going to interview someone like famous and powerful, and I have done a few of these like live audience things. I have a sort of an alter ego that I put on, and I do 5 claps. Let's just fast it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Mm-hmm.
And they're loud right here by my face, and it sort of wakes me up, but it also triggers that it tells me that it's go time. That hey, your mental clarity is going to work. You're going to be on. Your diction is going to be accurate, and you're going to have fun. And people are also going to enjoy you. I do that maybe 5 or 10 times a year. It's not a lot. It's not
Mm-hmm.
a lot, but it works. And I started doing that about 3 years ago, and it just changes everything because
Yeah.
the auditory, but also there's a little bit of that physical.
It's hitting all the senses, right? There's touch, like you said, there's physical, there's noise, right? And you can feel it in your body. It's an anchor, is what you've
Yes.
created an anchor that you can demand a certain state from that action. And it's wired in your brain like that. So that's super cool. I wonder if now that you're really recognizing that you've done that and you do it a couple times a year, I'm wondering if there's other times that you're looking for a certain state that you could create a different type of anchor for yourself that would help you get to that state that you want. Actually, I'm doing a keynote tomorrow, and that's one of the things that I'm going to be doing with the group is helping them to create an anchor to break an unproductive state and create the new emotional state that they want. So that's pretty cool.
Wow. Are you going to stream that by any chance?
No, it's a private event, but people who are listening, you can do that for yourself. Like you said, you created that for yourself. Did that get triggered from something that you watched or heard, or you just came up with that as a thought yourself, did it once and was like, whoa, this is powerful?
I need to wake up. I was going into a big event. I got to wake up. So let's try it.
And then it became a thing, right?
So that's right.
I mean, if you think about it, like if we high five each other, right? That's the real energy boost, right? High five and different things like that can really make a difference to change our state in an instant.
That's right. That's right.
Well, wonderful. Well, this has been great. I wish we had longer to talk. I can't wait to read your book. How can people find more information about you and get their hands on, let's say, an early copy? Maybe there's a pre-launch, or what date are you launching so people know whether it's available?
Yes. So my website is rickwalker.com, rickwalker.com. I send a every other week newsletter right now. It's 3-2-1 model. I'm going to give you 3 bangers. So that's 3 quotes in English. I'm going to give you 2 videos, which is 1 instructional, 1 interview. And I'm going to give you 1 sort of deep thought or essay about something that's sort of a big idea. And this is my book, 9 Steps to Build a Life of Meaning. It's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, and it's out July 5th. So you may be sharing this after July 5th, but it'll be after July 5th is when the book launches. And, buy a copy, buy 5 copies for all those underperforming men in your life.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rick, for being here. It was a real pleasure.
Penny, thank you so much for having me. Sure appreciate it.
And thank you all for being here. Bam. Let's do it 5 times. Bam, 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 bam. You guys are getting huge value out of this session. I want to make sure that before you go off to do whatever it is that you're going to do, that you take a reset moment and you think about what's the first thing that you can do to take immediate action, to take something away from today, right? Put it into practice. Don't just listen. What's that? The biggest thing, the 20% that's going to make 80% of the difference. And what can you do to put that into action? And then, of course, you can always come back and then do the next thing and the next thing. So glad that you're all here. And I look forward to seeing you and hearing from you on Substack or LinkedIn or whatever platform you find this on. Love to hear from you and what you want to hear about next. My name is Penny Zenker. It's time to reset. See you in the next episode. Hey, thank you for spending this time with me. It really means a lot. If you're feeling a little off, distracted, overwhelmed, stuck, or just out of sync, remember that's your signal to reset. And that's all it takes, just recognizing one reset moment at a time. So stay tuned for more tips, tools, tricks, stories, strategies, all here on Time to Reset. We'll see you in the next episode.